Hello and welcome to the Path to Power podcast with me, Dominy. On this podcast, I talk to incredible men and women who have fought adversity and are turning their pain into power. In today's episode of the Path to Power podcast, I talk to Keeley Taverner. Hi, welcome to the Path to Power podcast with me, Dominy. Today, I'm super excited to be interviewing Keeley Taverner. She is a psychotherapist, a speaker, a coach, an author, but more than anything, an incredible woman with a very real voice in the space of psychotherapy, therapeutic practice, and just change and the agency for self-change. So Keeley, so excited to have you here today. Is there anything I missed in that little intro?
No, I'm a change maker, mover and a shaker. I just want to help people who get to a point where what they're doing is no longer working and the way forward is unclear. And I think we can all relate to that. I'm really about, let's simplify it all. Let's take out all the big theory, the big jargon. That's been my duty. I've studied that. Now my passion is to make what I do as palatable, as easy to understand to the everyday person. And that's what I really believe my true mission is.
And Keeley, so you, I heard you, and we were just talking offline there, but I first heard your voice on One Extra a few weeks ago, and I was just blown away because I was like, this is a real woman, like really talking, intelligently, but relatably in an engaging way about therapy, about change, about healing, about toxic relationships. Big up One Extra for bringing your voice into that space so that I was able to hear you. But straight away, I was like, I need to get Keeley on the podcast. But your journey is fascinating as well, because so you've gone from working in IKEA to now being a real voice of authority in this space. Talk us through that journey, because I know for you it looked like some real toxic relationships and some real moments of change in that.
Yeah. So I think I grew up. What can I say? I think I fulfilled the low expectations that were really put upon me. So by my young adulthood, I was a single parent mom. I had 2 kids. I was in an abusive relationship, and I was working part-time at IKEA. Excuse me, can you leave the yellow bag behind? That was me. That was my job. And for me, I was in a relationship with a narcissistic individual, kept going back, kept getting pregnant, thought it would change if I loved him enough, did enough. If I took a car out on finance, because I'd find the solution to the problem. So he kept borrowing my car, that would cause problems. So let me take one out and tick for him. And then I would think that the solutions would come. I would just get myself into more problems, which would then, encourage avoidance behavior, stress, family getting worried. Then the violence kicked in. And what my saving grace was one day I was watching Oprah Winfrey show, and she had Jan Levansant come on and was talking about her book In the Meantime. And that for me was doable. I could go and buy a book. I had never really read books before, but I could go to the bookshop. And I can remember the bookshop in Harrow. I went and bought the book. And the book I bought was about the first time I really found a space that was about challenging me, about my behavior, thinking about how I allowed that situation to happen to myself, but fundamentally promoted self-responsibility, that we are responsible for our lives, which that message spoke to me. It helped me to see how I was in my situation and how I fueled it. And then the next book I bought was another book from a young Levansant called Yesterday I Cried, which was about her going back to college, becoming a lawyer. And that for me was just a game changer, because it gave me the audacity to think about, could I re-educate myself? Could I go back to college? Could I even go to university? Could I really change? And so one of the things I did was I just started small. I went to do an access course at my local college in Stanmore. Didn't realize that access courses actually are really preparing you for uni. And that by kind of March, January, we had to fill out a UCAS form. I thought I'd give it a go. Wasn't sure I'd get in without any GCSEs. And I didn't get in because I didn't have maths GCSE to do a psychology degree. But I wrote a begging letter to Brunel, basically saying that I'd get a tutor to help me. Got into Brunel, and there I did a 4-year sandwich course to ensure I got work experience. I knew I had no experience of working or helping people. So the fact that it was a 4-year sandwich with work placement meant that I got a job in the local prison, which was very interesting because a lot of the guys from our state were ending up there too.
Wow.
And then, that's tricky. And then about a year or so into working there, I just could feel that it felt like data entry. I mean, I was helping people. I'd come in with a great ambition to make a difference, but there was such focus on outcomes and paperwork and stats that I could see my drive was diminishing. And I'd had a mentor, Lara Jonah, I would always love her, and she just encouraged me, go back, go and do your masters. What next for you? Because I felt like I'd done my degree, like I'm good. You're like, no. Now you
well, we reach those ceilings, don't we? And we think we have to stop there. We see a ceiling, for goodness sake. That's the first issue, isn't it? So, and where was your relationship at then? Because what I find incredibly fascinating when I think about my story now, and I'm in therapy and talking it all through, is that no matter what my chaotic personal life was, actually my professional life was one that was quite successful throughout my 20s, even though I was in this cycle of toxic relationships, unhealthy relationships, a relationship with an addict. I ended up being homeless at one point, but I was still in jobs where I carried a lot of responsibility. At what point did the two versions of you, as it would have been, I'm sure, back then, kind of come into alignment, and how did that happen?
I think it's really a journey, because obviously I had 2 children with the individual, and so you don't idealistically. I think the challenge is you have to get real about reality. And for many women, well, I think fundamentally for many people in unhealthy relationships, I think the biggest issue is that we hold on to hope, and we have a fantasy of how relationships should be. And all the time we're involved in our fantasy, we avoid reality. And so the more I began to achieve was the more I would have to lose when I went back, or if I even dabbled. It just wasn't doable. Plus, with the violence, the more independent, the less he was able to control and manipulate, was the more that the violence would increase. So it became very volatile. And for me, growing up in the state, calling the police was something that was like, you don't do that. You don't do it, man. You don't call the feds, man. You don't call Babylon. So, so when I had to call the police because it just got way out of hand, I think that for me was quite an important turning point. And I think it was an important turning point for both of us, because at some level, I thought I could manage it. I thought I could do the, let's be decent. Oh, I'll meet you at Tesco's. You can give me the money for the baby. And I thought, I'd hoped that he would be able to, but actually, when you've been manipulated and controlled, actually the real time of threat is when you are beginning to become more independent and they have less power. It's actually a really volatile time. So I think with all the, having children, it just became incredibly risky. Just for a bit of leg over, nah, it just became too risky. And I was beginning to make strides. So having my work placement in the prison just made me feel I knew that change was possible. Yes, I'd started my degree, but actually being able to get my own keys and go into a prison totally made change possible for me, that I could have a career. And then getting around other professionals was also helpful, a Black professional too, because I was also scared about how do I bring aspects of my race into the equation, because that was really important for me, but not knowing, feeling shamed or embarrassed. And then I was given a mentor in Lara Jonah who got it, and I could share all aspects of the challenges that I was going through that weren't on the academic, You go to university, you learn, but that kind of emotional support and challenge of actually shifting, going from unskilled employee to wanting to develop a profession, I needed that guidance because no one around me came from that background. So that I think was fundamental. And I think anything with change is you get to a point where you have too much to lose. And if you know that if you go back, you're going to lose so much of what you've worked hard for. And I really couldn't do it. I couldn't do it to my dad. I couldn't do it to my parents who are now supporting me financially, looking after the kids. That for me was the most important. That I just felt very fortunate that I had an opportunity to change, and that my duty was to capitalize on that as best I could.
And when we think about unhealthy relationships and toxic behaviors, and certainly I know with my own journey, I often link that back to my very dysfunctional childhood. Was that the same for you? Were there aspects where, you know, in your own therapy where you look back and you say, well, that I can see where that pattern might have started, or I can see why this, or is it actually just, you know, that as empathic women, and where particularly when, you know, being an empath can be a positive in our careers, in our jobs, when we're in the caring profession, we can easily relate to people, there's a connection and so on. But actually then in our relationship, it becomes the opposite. Would you identify for you that there were some childhood traumas or anything that particularly happened that then you saw play out in your romantic relationships?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, you know, our adult relationships are underpinned by the foundations our parents set for us. And I don't think that anyone can really get away from that. So it did require me to have to look at, you know, how I was loved or how I was not loved, how I was encouraged, how I wasn't encouraged. And, you know, our parents, you know, and I always say this to my clients, like, it's not about, we examine your relationship with your parents, not to humiliate them or to make you hate them.
Right.
But we look at them in order to understand why we're having the dilemma we're having now, because we need to understand the roots of where our low self-worth comes from. And our parents, how we were loved, is fundamental to help us understand that process. So I think, you know, respectfully with regards to my parents, they did the best they could. I have no grudges. I'm most grateful for them. And they also have their own challenges. And so I think the challenge is yes, the past has happened, but as an adult, we have to take responsibility for how we now contend with that in our adult lives. Otherwise, we're going to always be blaming and going back into the past. When we do that, we miss the now and what we can do in the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when a client comes to you now and, you know, you see a pattern or you see that they're in an abusive relationship, but maybe they haven't yet identified that, what's the process, what's the journey that you go on with that client to, I suppose, bring them to that point of revelation? You know, I mean, a lot of us obviously talk about self-love and sort of learning to love ourselves, and that's obviously a massive part of it. But how do you take someone on that journey when there is so much toxicity still in existence? Or can you? Do they have to reach a point of saying, I want something different?
Well, I think firstly, they choose me. I work privately. So, you know, obviously when I worked in prisons, if I was working on groups, people don't generally have a choice. They're assigned a worker, you work. Working privately, if someone comes to me, they're coming to me with their distress. So already there's a level of motivation. However, because I never know what may come from the presentation. So, you know, someone will tell you this is the issue. You know, I think it's about gauging what comes up, gauging resistance, speaking about that with the client, sharing my hunches, talking to my supervisor, and to know that, you know, how far down the rabbit's hole do people want to go? Like, look where I started. I now have a career. I began by reading a self-help book. 20 years on, I'm here, I'm interviewing celebrities, I'm doing radio stations, I have my own business. So, you know, it depends, and it's to be respectful of how far people want to go. You also have to be mindful of power dynamics. You know, if I'm working with a woman, a kept woman, let's just call it what it is, a kept woman. Well, it's all good and well, you might be finding your voice, but where are you going to live?
Mm. Mm.
Speak your truth, really. I see these quotes all the time. Speak your truth. For some women, if they speak, for some women, some men, people in situations, speak your truth, you'll be slammed against the wall.
Mm.
So it's actually not helpful. You have to have a level of understanding and be culturally competent too about what the situation is that people are in order to best assist.
So good. It's so good, because what you're saying in essence is there's not a textbook answer to these situations. It's the compassion that you're able to bring through your own experiences and your academic studying and practice, right? So there is obviously still a massive stigma around therapy. Add the word psychotherapy in there and, you know, it gets a little bit more dramatic. What would you say to somebody that, you know, maybe has never thought about therapy or still assumes that therapy would just be for somebody that had issues?
Don't come. Don't come. Don't come.
Because it's got to be a choice that somebody makes to engage with that process.
I'm not here to fight those battles. The challenge is people are struggling. If people come to me, they've already done their research. You know, we're living in the time of people come in to see me for the first time, they know more about me. I feel like they're my mates already because they've done their research.
I felt like that as soon as we jumped on the call today. I was like, Keeley's there doing her makeup and, you know, it's just a friendly chat. But this is the point, isn't it? That is it. It is about letting people know that it can just be that. It can just be that you've got somebody that's a little bit further ahead, that understands some of the kind of neuroscience, the patterning that's happened, can help you unravel that a bit, but in a really relatable way. Go on.
That isn't for me to put on my client. That's what I go and pay my trainers and, you know, do my CPD for. My duty is to connect with the individual. I'm not here to convince people about coming to therapy. Look at my life. You'll see I embody it. Oh, something different about you. Oh, there's something about, I am it. I don't have to declare it. I don't have to shout about it. I be it. I
be it. I love that. It's so true, though. It's so true. I think it's one of the challenges that we have with, you know, you and I were talking before about systems and things that are in place within this world, and we all get frustrated and we want to change things because there's such a lack of trust in the leadership of many of the systems that we have and the organizations that operate for us, because they're often led by people where they're not being it, you know, they're not it, they're not, it's that beautiful Emerson quote I even posted on social media of like, you know, the way that you act is what I hear. I don't hear what you say to me, I hear what I see in how you are. And so what if though you're somebody that is, you know, this thing that we don't know what we don't know. So what if you are somebody that's stuck in a relationship that is toxic and abusive, but you are still in that phase? Because I've been there even up to even a year ago, where you've had that vision for somebody.
Yeah, but
you've had the vision.
But that's the problem for do-gooders. If you're a do-gooder, you go around wanting you want more for people than they want for themselves. You're going to make yourself anxious and depressed. They're living their best life. They're back with Johnny again, posting pics on Facebook, and you're sitting at home fretting about. People have to go through what they need to go through. And that's very difficult because it almost sounds like you don't care. The challenge is if you go in with all the best will in the world, if people don't want it, they don't want it. And what there is, I am very grateful for the adverse experiences I've been through.
Right.
Now, not because I wouldn't be where I am without them. I'm grateful to my baby father, because that situation, the hardship, the adversity, the being broke and having debts and car finances that I can't pay for, was a catalyst to get my ass together, to never allow anybody, never allow love to take me to such a low place ever again. I think the challenge with the West is that we expect life to be comfortable and we expect to be happy all the time. Life does not work like that. Adversity will come to all of us. The key is what you do about it.
But it can be so easy if you've had, and often what I see in people that I work with, and specifically young people, is that there is this victim mentality that can be generated out of trauma. And I don't even think that sometimes we're able to identify that that's what it is. We just know chaos. We just know and feel comfortable within chaos. And so I understand what you're saying, in that people need to reach out and want to go on that journey for themselves. How do we, though, promote that outside of just being that? Like, how do we show healthy relationships, for example, when we don't necessarily see that around us? Like, how do we even identify what that looks like?
Well, firstly, you need to have the challenge is you need to have a relationship with yourself first, because any relationship outside of you is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the challenges is people don't want to be by themselves. They don't want to be by themselves. They want to be perpetually distracted. Well, that's fine. But then you're going to have a load of people around you who distract you and who may not be on your same wavelength. We need to journey in the ways that we journey. Challenge for the do-gooders, the highly empathic. And this is what I write about in my course.
I know. Yeah, please.
Well, I write about it.
I'm like, yeah, please share, because I'm one of them.
Yeah, well, and I write about it.
Recovering, I'd like to say, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a journey. Wanting to help people is about, you also have to work out what's your own distress. It's your distress. You may be distressed about other people, but they're not distressed. They're not distressed. What's that about?
Yeah.
Let it go. And that's why I have also created alongside is the empath self-protection course, because I used to see this all the time working in prison. I guess I learned this very, very abruptly, very harshly in the prison, is certain prisoners will just draw upon the do-gooders. So you have officers and then you have the do-gooders. The do-gooders are the people who are like the drug and alcohol workers. The do-gooders are the people who can be probation officers as well, who support people, the people who do programs, psychology. So people just come, they know that it's you, and then they just start, oh, I need this, miss, can you help me with this, miss, can you help me with that? And then, you end up running around. But actually, it's just lip service. So what do? I stop. You ask the 5 WH questions. You get people, if you want to encourage people, see what they do for themselves. What, when, where, how. Stop finding solutions for people. People already know what they need. Ask questions to elicit from the individual and then observe their behavior. What do they do?
And when you talk a lot about the narcissistic behaviors as well. What is the link that you've seen in your work between the empaths, the narcissists, and also just give a bit of a definition of that, for anyone that's listening, an empath and a narcissistic in psychotherapy terminology, what would that be? And what's the relationship that you see there?
Oh, so a narcissist is selfish, a relentlessly selfish person who adores and worships, who thinks they're the greatest thing that the world's ever seen. And the empaths are faithful worshippers. They're often people who are rather insecure. And so when they're seduced by the narcissist, they justify, make excuses and explain away their behavior in order to have a relationship, because their own ego. I would challenge an empath all day long, because the empath's ego believes that they can love them enough, care enough in order to change them. And what the narcissist will prove to them time and time again is it's not possible. But empaths hate that. And so they go on a campaign where they stay plugged in, and they do themselves the utmost damage by holding on because of the fear of truly beginning to let go. So a co-created psychological warfare takes place, and the empath will always come off worse. Always.
Yeah. And how does someone identify those red flags from the beginning, in your experience, and what would you say straight away, these are red flags of a unhealthy relationship to walk away from?
It's really interesting, and I was writing about this in the empaths course, is that the problem with it is the red flags are the things that seduce you into the relationship. He's a charmer. You charm the drawers off of you. Well, that's what got you in it. So there's a challenge with that, which is the beauty of experience. Someone can tell you what it's like to drink a cup of tea, and they can describe it in such eloquent, descriptive language. But to truly understand, one has to sip tea for themselves. You could have been warned. But listen, when you're under that charm, you won't hear it. So what do you need to do? You need to experience it for yourself. Yet when we come out the other side, we don't want others to experience that. We want to cue them up with all the problems. Look out for this, look out for that. The factors that influence narcissistic behaviors are the factors that draw you in, and you get hooked in. And it's a hell of a roller coaster of a ride. And not everybody comes out alive, psychologically alive. It can do a lot of damage to people. There's no two ways about it.
And so for you though, Keeley,
how do you heal? The challenge is you've been through it. It's your responsibility to heal or not.
And so for you, how did you heal? And how do you make sure that you do not end up in another abusive relationship? Because that's the fear that, certainly for myself on the journey of healing, that the abusive relationship comes back. Go on, sorry.
It will happen. It's attachment issues. Attachment issues are entrenched. The challenge is you're highly likely to draw those types to you. It's not a problem. I draw narcissists all the time, and I'm an empath. I do. But I'm a woke empath. And that's very different. So how do I get out of it? I make my pain purposeful. That's why I have a career out of what I've been through. Any adverse situation we have, and we will all have adverse experience. I'm sorry to tell people, you can't just perpetually live your good life.
No, for real. Yeah.
You can't be happy without sadness. You can't experience joy without sorrow. I don't know what they're telling you out there, but it's a lie. Stop following the Kardashians. We need to get real about the realities of our existence. We need opposites. From a spiritual perspective, that's how the universe works. Life, death, day, night, boy, girl. That's how it works.
Sure. It's the natural laws, yeah.
The natural laws. You cannot have light without darkness. You cannot have a heroine without a villain. Well, who would Superman be if he didn't have a villain? We wouldn't be able to see him as a hero. The challenge in any adverse situation is, what are the uncomfortable life lessons you need to learn from it? What do you need to learn? And some of us, especially for the empath, it will hurt us to see someone else going through it. One must respect free will. Yeah. Otherwise, you become like, have you ever seen those kind of evangelical Christians who are always just trying to ram the Bible down people's throats? They're like, you've got to scare people off.
Yes, Keeley, I've seen those. Yes, I have.
Right? They frighten people. They've got them in Uxbridge. They have a big megaphone every week, and they're just screaming, preaching Jesus.
There's the same in Stratford. It's not even preaching Jesus, it's preaching hell. It's definitely not the Jesus.
It's just like, can't someone give them an asbo? And I love the word. Give them an asbo. I love the word. I love the word. If you try and have a word with them, oh gosh, it's pointless.
It is.
But you don't want to be like that. We don't want to be like harassing people about the goodness of change. Be the change. Let people come to you. People now come to me. I don't have to ram it down anybody's throat. Key, how did you get out of that situation? Because I be it. And being an empath, declaring oneself as an empath, is no joke. We have to also learn to respect change. We have to respect people's choices. But that also can be very tricky if you're working in the system too, because we know that they have lots of safeguarding processes.
Safeguarding, for sure. So, and on that note of safeguarding, like, what would you say are your safeguarding? Like, how do you safeguard yourself? What are your healthy habits? You're clearly somebody that, you know, has rode these adversities and come out so strong and, you know, with such autonomy and agency in your experiences that you do empower others to change. You have this incredible voice of relatability and authenticity. How do you ensure that that remains? You know, what are your coping strategies? What are your self-care strategies, as it were?
Well, I think you have to look at your circle. As Danae said, no snakes in my circle. You've got to look about who's close to you.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I was literally about to do it. I was going to do it, but I was like, no, white girl here can't do that. But you did it good. But you did it good. It's all right. You did
it. One extra.
I know, babes. I know.
So it's a lad.
But go on, go back to that, because that's a big one, isn't it? You know, that is a massive one. Your tribe, your community, yeah.
And it takes time. You know, nothing in life comes easy, despite the fact that you can Uber apps and watch, you know, a whole box set in a weekend. Everything else in life takes time. Change takes time. It's a process. So I would definitely say you've got to look out for who's in your circle. I would also encourage people to think about, what is it that you love? What have you given up on? What did someone not give you permission to do as a child? What did you abandoned as a kid or just gave up on? There's usually something in life. Even if it is adverse situations, you know, I didn't grow up with much of an ambition, but adversity, going through that, gave me purpose. And that's the beauty of adversity. If you can find the lesson, who better to help other people than someone who's been there? That's why people come to me, because they know Key ain't just book. Key went through that. Key is the girl. You need to chat to Key. People phone me all the time. Like, someone said I need to chat to you.
Listen, yeah, someone said.
I'm not even going to tell you who it is, but they just said I need to chat.
Oh, it reminds me of a scene in this. Have you seen Kane Brown's film that he did called She's the One? And like his friends make him go to this relationship expert, this like palm reader, all these different people. And he literally walks up, he's like, yeah, my friend says I need to come see you.
Yeah, with such reluctance. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So what are you going through? What's the dilemma then? And that's one of the things, you know, what's the dilemma?
Yeah.
So I think we have to be mindful of our circle. I also encourage people to audit our phones. We spend so much time with devices now, more than ever, and you need to check your settings. Some of us need to take certain apps off our phone. It's not helpful. We got the Hinge crew. Ladies, some of us now ain't helpful. Some of you, we got attachment issues. You need to come off of that stuff. It ain't good for you.
Do you know what? I'm too scared. Listen, I did one Match.com. This was years ago, and I went on the most awful date. We'll never do it again. But it put me off dating apps altogether. But partly because I know who I am and what my issues can be like, I'm like, no, God's just, I mean, I do challenge myself sometimes. So I'm like, Dom, don't be super spiritual about this. God ain't just going to drop your man on your lap. But I don't know, there's a more of an innate trust and faith, but maybe I'll jump on it at some point. But I do see a lot of my friends use it, and it's not always healthy, is it? You know, because people get lost in that instead of in themselves. And that's what I see.
Well, I think there's a challenge with too much navel gazing as well. You know, I spend a lot of time by myself. It's not ideal. I'm a very social person, but my career has resulted in that way. What do? I use that time to create more content. You know, so I think we do have a challenge with the kind of just, you know, self, me, because it in itself can be a form of narcissism.
Yeah.
So I think there's always a delicate a delicate balance. But look at your apps and notice if they become unhelpful. You know, I just got Sky. I'm at my new house, and they're like, oh yeah, don't forget to download the Sky app for your phone on the go. Why do I want to know? Like, why do I watch? No. So monitor that, because those apps are, they're designed to keep you engaged. They're very deliberate. They're designed like people like me, like psychologists. They're marketing psychologists, so they understand how the brain works. The little red dot is deliberate. Red dot is for danger. We see red lights. Red lights make us react. So be mindful of what you're spending your time on online, and there's lots of little features on your phone that can assist you with that. That's our responsibility, and I'm really sorry to say this to people. No one's coming to save us. We must learn to be our own best friend, and I think that is solid advice.
I agree. And are there things that you do as a daily practice, you know, like be it a certain morning routine that you have, or just certain kind of mantras that you have that you've learned over the years, or has it just been purely an organic journey of growth and development?
I think we need to be careful. We need to be careful, because sometimes people can preach that you must journal, you must do your yoga meditation for 10 minutes, and then you must write. We have to work out what works for us. If I'm in a very dark place, I'll journal, but I don't journal every day. I don't need to. But one of the things I don't need to, I could do, but I don't have sufficient time. So I'm not going to browbeat myself about it. It just doesn't happen. I do have a page a day calendar. Every day I turn it over. There's usually a nice little message there. Usually I might do a voice note for people on my phone. I put it up in my WhatsApp status. That's something that I do. I think fundamentally, one of the things I've always done is I put things in motion. So, you know, I'll start a degree, but that's a whole motion. I'll start writing a course. So you have to work out how you work. Some of us are not ritualistic. Some of us will say, oh, I should meditate. And then you beat yourself up if you meditate. Well, if you beat yourself up, don't do it then. It becomes unhelpful. You know, you have to find ways that work for you. And obviously we have to strategize against ourselves as well. Some of that might be you don't have your phone in your bedroom at night. It's small hacks to assist you, but it's fundamentally, what do you love? I believe fundamentally, find what you love. If you know, I can work for hours on end because I ultimately love what I do. And I think that is a great inoculation. It gives your life meaning, it gives your life purpose, and you go beyond yourself. It's been very difficult for me to get into toxic relationships. It's not that I don't like them. Trust me, I still love them. It's true, right? You're drawn to what you're drawn to. I grew up around these guys. And not all are bad. But when I have too much to lose, I have too much to lose now. And so you don't compliment me at that level. I think also, if we're talking about women and our relationships, if we're getting in toxic men, I think there's also a space where we need to heal our relationships with our fathers. I don't hear enough people talking about that. We need to heal our relationship, whether they're dead, whether they're in our lives or not in our lives. Healing that relationship can do so much for our relationships with men. If we're in, say, you know, if we're in heterosexual relationships, I think healing our relationship with parents, same-sex relationships, what kind of relationships, is healthy, because unconsciously we replicate that pattern. And the way forward can be to heal that. Be mindful, you know, be mindful of news, be mindful of how much media you take in, because so much is designed to manipulate, control. You know, I mean, the fear on the news, and I get it, you know, pandemics, but it's an awful lot. And so we have to take responsibility for managing that, managing how much we allow in here.
Yeah.
You know,
in the same way we do with our food into our bodies, right? It's the same with what goes into our minds. And I'm really conscious of your precious time, and I know you're back to back. So just tell us then where people can find you, the various programs and different capacities in which people can work with you in, because you're running some incredible, it's not just kind of the one-to-one therapy, you run programs, courses, you know, talks. So just tell us a little bit about what's coming up in the next few months.
Yeah, so we start Pain to Purpose again. in Pain into Purpose. I believe that's the secret to a good life, making your pain purposeful. I start that again in March. We have spaces. If you're interested, please do sign up. I give you the all. I give you the answers. I can tell you exactly why you're depressed and exactly what you need to do about it. Simple science stuff to me, because I've observed that for so many years. The empaths course is about to be prettified. I've written the manual, and my assistant will be, we call it the prettification process. So that is in the process of being done. One of the reasons for the empath course is just because people keep asking me for it. I thought I'd make a course about making pain purposeful, but I can see that people specifically want that to help them, to get
I'm coming for that course, Keeley. I'm coming. I'm telling you.
So I have books also on my website. My book, Why Love Hurts, and What You Need to Do About It, and also Am I Dating the Narcissist? So, and then obviously people then come to work with me on a one-to-ones. Often people often, and I get it, you know, people want that privacy because obviously we are suffering, and we can feel shamed or embarrassed, or we just want that one-to-one time. When I do groups, we bring like-minded people together, and my ambition to do that is we soon realize, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me, like that. And then we realize, oh my God, she's prettier than me, she's skinnier than me, she's richer than me, she's a different color from me, and she and he have all got these issues. It's incredibly freeing process. And then the group begin to form, and people assist and support each other, and it's a blessed process to be a part of them. And that's more the direction I'm moving in now. I'm just passionate about helping more people, because working at one-to-one level, I just began to feel really guilty that I was sharing my insights with just one soul, where so many people
could learn.
I might see one client, or say the same thing 5 times in a row in a day, and I'm very fortunate, I'm very grateful for that. But a secret, and that's where my groups came from, the patterns and themes that keep emerging in therapy. So I give my all. I have got, this is my life and it's my purpose, and that passion just absolutely comes through.
I can see it. I love it. I love to see it. And where can we find you? So if people want to follow you, engage with you, the best way to get you.
keyforchange.com, and that's, well, you can spell it with the 4, or you can use the number, as I said on One Extra. I got both.
Do you know what? Yeah. I just clocked though. Key for Change is Keeley. Oh, how did that take me so long? Love it. Well done. Excellent. So keyforchange.com with the number or with the word for. FOR.
You can find me there. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Keeley, so much for your time. Any final wise words? Anything you want to end on?
No one's coming to save you. You have to learn to save yourself. You have to learn to be your own best friend. And I know it's far from easy, but being stuck is far from easy either. We just have to decide. And when you take a small step outside that comfort zone where you won't know, you take a chance on yourself, trust me, from a spiritual level.
Divine intervention. I agree.
Woo!
Woo! I know. I got the goosebumps when you said all of that. So
Me too.
Love it.
Every time as I sit in my house in a nice suburb, amen. God is great.
Because you did that. You went and got that. God is good.
I took a chance. I followed the clues, and I said yes. God gives us signs. You see, and I can't talk like this in the NHS. They would have kicked me out. Right? But you get signs.
Crazy religious lady, go put her on the corner in Stratford.
Wacko, you know, that you get signs. I believe you get signs, and our duty is just to keep following the signs, follow the cues, and your head will say to you all kinds of things about why it's not possible. Someone like you, that you can't do that. Who do you think you are? And that's the voice in your head, and that's fine. Let it speak, and in the meantime, do so, and amen. Hallelujah.
Hey, hallelujah. Let's go to church. Love it. Thank
Hear
you,
my
Keeley.
cry,
I know. Oh, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll be in touch anyway soon. But yeah, so much love.
Yeah, take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Path to Power podcast.